So welcome everyone. Today is the first classroom. I am going to show you the kind of first couple of chapters in the course. So it will be not about exactly variations. Of course, feel free to write any questions you have during I am showing positions to you. So just write anything you would like to know. But this will be mainly not concrete variations, just the concept that how black is playing in these lines when white is not choosing, the most critical or obvious solutions. All right, so let's start with the positions. So here, okay, you can be very familiar with this position. I mean, unless you are not playing uh, e4, e5 at all, or didn't play before. So I mean, probably best is even that I just okay, actually, yeah, just okay, not so easy. In any case, so like this is when white tries to deliver the scholar's mate, and black is protecting first with the pawn against the queen, then the queen retreats to f3, then the knight comes to f6, and now the queen goes to b3, but it's not the same type of threat, right? So now it's not the queen which is threatening to take on f7. So one very typical punishment in this first part of the course when black is actually not defending like automatically against white's threats, but tries to counterattack, especially if the threat is not deadly. Like bishop takes f7 is not a deadly threat, so it takes a pawn, but it definitely doesn't end the game. So it's not a necessity to play a move like queen e7 or d5 or anything like that. So in such situations, counterattacks are very good, and here knight d4 is very strong. So black is attacking the queen on b3. The queen, I mean, if the queen moves to some other square, then it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the pawn is also under attack on e4. So it's just really, really bad. And once this capture on f7 happens, king e7, queen to c4, the only square to cover the bishop. Now black just goes b5, and it will be actually the king which collects the bishop on f7. So this is just a typical way to handle this type of threats. So to ignore them and to create something stronger. Now next position will be obviously more tricky and not this obvious. So here again, I mean, you can see that this is not the standard line which happens. So basically this is then e4, e5, and white plays c3 in the second move. But the position still looks like normal, so to say, for white. I mean, what can be too bad, but it is actually that quickly that black can take over the initiative and the better position here. So basically what white wants to do in this position is to play d4 and have a pawn in the center and protect the knight, maybe later develop with bishop c4. So that could be pretty nice. But black has a very strong move, which yeah, basically fights against this d4 and is not allowing white to have this control, and that's a little bit unusual moves. So okay, you may say bishop d6 is good, knight f6 is good. I mean, these are good moves, but position is around equal. But black has this very strong move of queen e7. So you can see that basically it stops d4 because after en passant, the knight is in trouble on e5, and if white cannot play d4 easily, then black just has space advantage in the center. So again, a little bit unusual move, but a way to learn how to take advantage of white's dubious play in the opening. So for example, knight c4 is possible here, then knight c6, bishop e2, bishop f5, black castles long, knight f6 is coming, and with the space advantage, just a better position. So yeah, all right, so next position. So what happened here? I mean, what happened here is that what we aim in this course a lot, we aim for this. We want to achieve a quick d5. And if it happens, it means that there is an e5 pawn versus a d3 pawn. So it means that white has more space. Sorry, black has more space, and white has the bishop pair. But okay, for now, the bishop pair is not really doing that much. And, you know, with the knights positioned really well in this position, black already can fight for advantage. So maybe if you want, you can write in the chat in this position how would you continue. Oh, sorry, it's white to move actually, so white makes a move queen d2. So basically, in order to cover the f4 square, so knight f4 is not so easy anymore because of bishop takes on d4, pawn takes, and then the knight would be hanging. Yeah, sorry. So it was like yeah, I make this move queen d2. So now it's the question actually. Yeah, c5 is an excellent move. C5 is great. With or without queen d2, I have to say that's a very good move. Any other idea, or I should just move on? f5. I like c5 better. f5 is also not bad because it gains some space and, you know, it goes forward. It's not bad. Bishop e6 and long castle, very good. But probably in these situations, you know, it's slightly better for black, but most likely nothing so special. So white can take on d4, then maybe move with the queen to g5, you know, just try to trade a few pieces, and uh, maybe they are okay. Okay, so I will show you the move. A5, b5, b4, little bit slow, I would say. So then white definitely have the chance to, I mean, just take on d4 with the bishop and move the queen, or castle short. Shouldn't be that horrible. But black has a very nice move in this position. Basically, just an idea how possible to increase the pressure. It's bishop to h3. So it's an unexpected tactical move with pressure on f3 and attack on g2. The tactics are just working out in black's favor. So knight takes d4 is the move here. I mean, obviously, move like g8 is not really serious because it's just possible to take twice on f3. Rook is hanging, pawn is hanging, and structure is awful. So it's not a question. If the bishop would take on d4, then the problem is that the bishop can take on g2 with a threat on g2 and f3. So even if the bishop wouldn't be hanging, black is winning back the material with the extra pawn. So knight takes d4 is kind of the move here, and okay, now e takes on d4, attacking the bishop. I mean, bishop must take on d4. So if the queen takes on d4, then gh. So now bishop takes on g2, and now queen e3 check. Kind of important for white. I mean, if it would be rook g1, then just simply queen d4. I mean, at the very least, black can collect one more pawn and just completely winning. So yeah, white gives this check, so the bishop is protected, king d7. No problem for white that the rook can come to the e file, one of them. c4, queen f5, there is a line like this, rook g1, and then rook to e8 with the tempo. So the position has opened up, both kings are in the center, but since it is black who is attacking, then it also means that it's just on the e file, big problems, bishop f3, knight f4, maybe even queen d3 at some moment. So the position is just extremely good for black. So okay, the main thing from this position is obviously this idea of bishop takes, of bishop h3. Sorry, there was a question. King d7, bishop g4 check. Yeah, if bishop g4 check, then f5, right? Just block the check. Now really everything is hanging plus the pin on the e file. So yeah, that would have been really bad. Okay, so let's move on to the next position. Okay, next position is a little bit messed up, I have to say. So it's not exactly how it should be. At least not how I want it. But it's not a full. It's not so difficult to imagine how it was. Let's put it like that. So the bishop was on c8 in the previous position, and bishop g4 was played, which is once again just a very nice idea to know in this case when the bishop is developed to g2. And okay, white is trying to play some sort of revert opening like Philidor, I mean, or something like that. So what's the point of bishop g4? I mean, it's just a very confusing move for white because there is not a really good way to block this attack on the queen. So it's just a positional idea. So obviously, in case of f3 happens, then the bishop happily retreats to e6, and the g2 bishop is closed. So that's not ideal. I mean, the knight doesn't really want to come to f3 because after d, um, there are no good ways here. So let's say pawn takes, and after queen to d1, if the king takes, then probably the game is over in the pin. And if the knight takes, then the e4 pawn can be hanging. So yeah, knight f3 is also not ideal. Knight g2 is also not so good because um, white can take with d4, but again, this I believe will be the next example, so that I will not show now. And there is bishop f3. I mean, this looks kind of a logical move. So not closing the bishop, offering the trade. And yeah, basically this motive is that now the bishop retreats to e6. And the move what white would love to play is knight to f3, but with this nice, bishop g4, bishop e6 maneuver, it's not possible anymore. So white's pieces are a little bit disorganized here, and this is just another motive to know, when basically black is already playing for the advantage after 5 moves or so. Okay, so this is the next position. So basically knight g2 is the most expected reply from white, and yeah, basically whole point of white's play is this bishop on g2, that it's open in the long diagonal. At some moment ed can happen, and yeah, this bishop is the main point obviously of this setup. But black has two options now: d takes e4 or d4. I would say d4 is really bad, even though it gains some space on the queen side. Okay, really bad is maybe too strong, but it just white can maybe even go knight d5. But even after knight b1, some sort of a reversed king's Indian, where at least white can do some typical play. So in different places in the course, in such position, especially when there is no good way to recapture on d1, and d takes e4 is just very strong. Like ideally, white should not let this diagonal to be closed, but knight e4 is simply not working, because after knight e4, if bishop e4, so this is the way to keep it open, but after knight e4, black is winning material. So this is immediately game over. I mean, you can play f3, but it will be not really good. And in case of d, of course, then at least king takes knight e4. I mean, this is also very close to being game over after long castle, because the knight is hanging on e2. So yeah, and if d takes e4 happens, I mean, this trade is pretty much always good for black. The bishop is closed here on g2. Black can easily develop like bishop c5, gain some space on the queen side, and the knight on e2 is absolutely horrible. So it's really, there is nowhere square for this knight. It's completely restricted, and it's very hard to remaneuver it anywhere. Okay, so next position is basically already at move 2. So white played this knight e2, I mean, which is a little bit funny move, but not too bad, I have to say. Knight c6, but now g3. So just white wants to develop kind of slowly, like this bishop g2, castle d3, and so on. But once again, I can come back to this thing which I said earlier, that even against the main lines like Italian and Rui Lopez, the course wants to go for a very quick d5, and claiming that if just the trade happens, then with the e5 pawn and some space advantage, it's possible to be even better. So when white plays slowly like this and a little bit unusual moves, then you should know what to look for, and why not d5? I mean, just d5, and black is already better after 3 moves, because white is doing strange things and black just occupied the center. So in case of ed queen d5, of course this is not playable for white because the rook is um, I mean, rook g1 has to be played, but this is not a serious possession. So white must play bishop g2. And here it's very important, that we want to trade pawn for pawn here, so to say. I mean, we will anyway trade pawn for pawn. I mean, let's say playing knight f6, ed knight is also taking pawn for pawn, but the tempo is different. So like, it's not like we are wasting time with knight f6, but we take on e4. Take on e4, forcing basically white to take back with the bishop. So now white doesn't have the central pawn and black has. So it's already excellent. For black, like more space with this pawn and even some tempo for the development with like knight f6. Something which is an interesting idea always when the bishop is not on g2 is just to play bishop to h3 and stop white from castling. This is also very good, but making this move of knight f6, bishop g2, and just bishop e6. So basically white's position doesn't make too much sense. Black can even castle long. Already, that shows the ambition, and then h pawn can run the board, which is also very typical when the knight is not covering the h4 square. Okay. Knight c3 instead of bishop takes e4. 1 second. Yeah, but the problem is similar. So even if you manage to take back with the knight on e4, it will be still a piece there. So it will be like more space for white, but I don't see any reason why not f5, to be honest. So I just keep the pawn and I'm planning to develop like this. Looks like a very healthy extra pawn to me. But, even if not f5 wouldn't be available, I can just play knight f6, let's say, and then really go for this idea of not letting you to castle, and then I go for long castle myself. But here I would go f5, 100%. Okay, so next position is the most complicated in some sense. So here white played d3, which is kind of correct, I have to say. So question to you now. How would you play here with black? So you can see that the situation is somewhat similar to kind of previous possession when black has this pawn on e5, white has pawn on d3, so it means black has space advantage and definitely no problem. So I would say it's close to impossible to recommend a move here which would give away the advantage what black has with the extra space. But obviously if white finishes development, plays knight e4 at some moment, it's not impossible to equalize in this position. Knight c5, bishop a2, bishop g4, queen e3, knight e6. Okay, that's an interesting regroupment. I mean, it's certainly possible. Okay, I can actually make the moves in the board, so why I am not doing that, right? So bishop a2, you go bishop g4, queen e3, knight e6. You know what I little bit don't like is that there is some coordination problems maybe with our pieces. So let's see if I castle. I am not sure how we like which piece goes where. Knight d5 is not really possible. White wants knight e3, knight e4. Maybe sometimes knight g3 followed by h3 is interesting. So yeah, I mean about this I'm not convinced. I'm not, this is not bad or anything, but it's not convincing. And yeah, so this is one other theme which you can see in the first few chapters of the course, that if you know white is sort of behind in development and the king is still in the center, then material doesn't matter so much. The thing is to open possession, create threats, and develop very quickly. So this knight c5 bishop g4 is a good try, I would say. So uh, this is quick development for sure, but e4 is even much quicker, so to say. So obviously because of this pin on the e file, white must take with the pawn, so there is no other move here. And maybe at this point, briefly, I will show you that why d3 was kind of good move. I mean, in an already bad position. Because if the alternative short castle would have played now really knight to c5, the bishop goes to a2 and then e4. And now you can see that this queen doesn't really have many squares. Like g3 is not there, h3 is not there. I mean, obviously, like basically nothing is there. e3 is a must, and then just bishop take on h2. King obviously cannot take because check. And if king goes to h1, I mean, it's already a pawn up, but uh, you can say that maybe things are not so easy. Of course, there are millions of ways to win here, but none of them is like super trivial, I would say, because bishop is hanging and also b4 is hanging a little bit. So what would you do here, which would kind of clinch the game? It's basically one move. If you make this move, everything is clear. Yeah, if you play knight g4, probably queen g5. I mean, knight g4, I believe, is one of the ways to win. So queen g5, and then you probably remove your queen to b6, let's say, or something like that, and you keep your winning advantage. Knight b3, excellent move. So it's basically stops b4, attacks the rook, but the most important is that the queen is open to h5. This is really just a brilliant move. Bishop is still untouchable, obviously. White is most likely taking, and after queen h5, the usual discover checks with the bishop are finishing the game. So yeah, very well done. This knight b3 is a nice move. So that's why, to prevent this type of things, d3 was played. Now e4, opening q square, d takes e4. Here I saw knight c5 mentioned, which is interesting, but it's a little bit materialistic, right? Because we want to recapture the pawn, and material is not our first or second concern in these lines when we want to punish. The first move is knight e5, attacking the queen. And once again, if we take a closer look, the queen doesn't have that many squares, so most likely it doesn't want to go into the bishop's diagonal. Other bishop is controlling the light squares, so of course queen e3 is played. Now bishop to c5. One more tempo. So queen f4. What would happen in case of this move, queen g5? Bishop f2, you mean? And in case of king f2? Knight d3, I also take it. Yeah, queen is protected, right? So it's not... I mean, it's a good idea. It's a good idea, but execution is not correct. h6, probably I'd go to queen h4. Maybe I'm still holding on. I mean, okay, you want knight g6 maybe, but okay, so if you play h6, probably I go here. If you go knight g6, I go here, and sometimes your knight is hanging on g6 because of this diagonal here. So it is something else. Bishop h3 looks interesting. I don't know if in this position or not. But what if I castle? Maybe I can just castle, no? And bishop f4 also. Very good. Very, very good. Exactly. So we don't have to complicate. Knight takes e4, exactly. So we just take the free pawn, and if white would take the free knight, then we take the free queen on e5. So that's how we punish, yes. So therefore white goes queen to f4. Now knight g6, one more tempo on the queen, like, I don't know, what is this already, like 4 in a row? Queen goes to f3. I mean, queen is seriously lacking squares, and e4 has to be guarded. One more tempo, bishop g4. Queen g3. So this is how we play against these lines. Sacrificing some material, rapidly developing, creating very unpleasant threats. And what is the... yeah, I mean, it's pretty much winning move for black here. What is this move? Thank you. Bishop e2 and knight takes e4. Okay, on bishop e2, I take with the king. Maybe not so simple. Other move was still knight takes e4. Yeah, this is more interesting, but okay, after queen g4, you take f2. Probably I play something like queen a4. This is, kind of the thing that we want to cash in a little bit too early, and maybe it can get somewhat complicated. So now if we trade, then the knight takes, and actually it's white who will be up material. It is something else. Okay, it's not such an obvious move for sure. And, yeah, so we are slowing down a little bit. We play h5 indeed. So we protect the bishop, threaten h4, threaten knight takes e4, and yeah, the queen is in a huge danger actually in this position. Also, if you just push the pawn till h3, I mean, it's like super dangerous. So yeah, after h5, basically it's already winning position for black. But anyway, just remember how this thing started with this e4 95. That was the crucial part of this position. Okay, so yeah, let's do this one. Okay, we are already at 38 minutes. It's also a YouTube video, so I should at some moment stop and maybe this exercise. Uh, thank you, GM Solver. So with such positions, you can meet very often in the first part of the course. If you count the pieces, black is down a piece, full piece, actually not even a pawn. Not even a pawn for it, but what is for it is the king in the center, and okay, black's king is safe and the pieces are developed. So how should black try to attack here? There are many ways, obviously. Queen h4 is one way for sure. It looks very tempting, right? So it's a tempo, also some threat on e1. I believe it's a good move. Probably white should play something like g3 or queen g3 maybe. Actually, queen g3 could be really useful because then the queen is not on the file anymore. So actually, that was an additional point of queen h4. So queen h4 is an excellent candidate move, but I believe white can most likely survive here, at least for a while. Queen f6, that's an absolutely brilliant move. Basically doing the same as queen h4, just a little bit, you know, better square, so to say, because now white cannot gain a tempo on the queen. Obviously, the queen is untouchable because it's mate in 1. And the bishop is hanging here. The same can be said about the pawn on e5. And, then black can just continue development with bishop f5 and bishop g4, for example. So already there are like very huge problems here for white. There is no defense, objectively speaking, so the position is losing. I don't know, humanly speaking, what can we check? I mean, maybe a move like bishop g3 is not illogical, but okay, again, we have like a very nice choice. I believe knight takes e5 would be the most obvious one. So I'm attacking the queen has to guard the bishop. The bishop is coming out with a check to g4. The rook is coming to d8. So the position is just collapsing. And I mean, if you take these, then not only checkmate is there, but also b2 pawn is there. That's what happens when none of the none of the pieces are developed. So yeah, so basically this really nice move of queen f6 is causing huge problems. Also, if something like queen g3, I mean, this is another move which can be tried, but again, we just take the pawn. So now it's one pawn only for black, but with these two open files and bishop g4 coming with rook d8, it's simply not possible to withstand this pressure.